Hello, good evening and welcome. I'm delighted to be joined this evening by Melanie Harris, author of Who's the Dummy Now? This is Melanie's second book, and I'm looking forward to discussing with her what it is to be an author and how it is she comes to write and why it is you should buy and read and enjoy Who's the Dummy Now? So Melanie is a member of Kinloss. You can't see here that our studio audience has 350 people who are packed into the manager room. To enjoy her success and to fate her, and all of them have signed up to buy and get signed copies of the book, which you too can do. The book is available in hard copy. It is available on your Amazon Kindle. And if you are a subscriber to Kindle Unlimited, it's available there as well. But Melanie, where did you grow up?
2 doors away from where we are sitting right now. That's where I was born, in Kinloss Gardens, Finchley.
Right.
And
what was it like living next to a shore?
Wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'd be sitting in the garden with a pina colada, listening to the cousin.
On Yom Kippur?
Not quite. And it was a small, tight community. It wasn't the big community we know it is to be now, but it was like a village.
Right.
And
how old were you till you left living next door to the shore?
We moved when I was about 21.
All right. So was the parking in the street always as terrible as it is now?
Yes. Unfortunately, I got into trouble with the police at a very young age because I let down the tires of a car that was blocking our driveway. And in the morning, when the driver came to pick his car up, he soon discovered who was the culprit.
And you got into trouble.
I got into trouble.
And
that was
hence,
my first brush with the law.
that was your first, and that's how you ended up writing crime fiction.
You got it.
Who was the dummy then? So, so you grew up locally. Where do you go to school?
Henry to Barnet.
School for young ladies, and
And
you enjoy that?
Yes, it was very nice, people that, all the local girls, because it was a school, and it was great, yeah.
Best memories of school?
Oh, that's difficult. I don't know.
Favorite subjects?
History.
Because?
It's fascinating. The past is connected to the present to the future, it's all connected, and I love that.
Right, and after school?
My wallet.
Well, it was very, very good. I mean, in those days, it was very fashionable to be a secretary. So I became a secretary. I went to secretarial college, and then I went to work for the Duke of Westminster. And that was quite a nice job.
How do you end up working for the Duke of Westminster?
He was looking for a secretary, and it was very nice.
And what do Dukes of Westminster do?
Well, he is one of the biggest landowners in the country. So we had a section of the estate. I had Belgravia. Other people had to look after Mayfair. It was a struggle. Somebody had to do it.
Right, and you just thought that one more square on the Monopoly board is so much better for this.
Tried to be a sitting tenant, but he wouldn't have it.
Right, and family life. You brought the tribe here with you. Brought the tribe. Tell me about family.
I'm married to Anthony,
Mm-hmm.
who is a very loving husband and father, and we live in Blackstone, and we have 2 sons, Charles and Edward,
20 and 28.
20 and 28, and we're very proud of them.
Mm-hmm. And how close is Anthony to any of the characters you've written about in Who's the Dummy Now?
He is close to one character, yes.
He is close to one character. Have you told him which?
He hasn't asked, and I haven't offered the information.
Is he alive at the end of the story?
Barely.
Barely. Okay. All right. And hopefully both of you will be by the end of this evening. So how did you come to be a writer?
I don't know. It's not something I ever wanted to do. It didn't appeal to me at all.
Right.
I didn't even think about it. But I wanted to. I had a big story I wanted to put down. It was a family saga. I thought it was worth chronicling, and I wrote about a family. Obviously, a lot of my own personal experience was involved in writing the story. And when I got to the end of it, sometimes when you dig deep into your psyche, it can be quite draining.
Right. This was your first book?
This was my first
One
book.
Child, Too Many.
One Child, Too Many. So when the opportunity to write the second book came along, I grasped it with both hands because it was so different from the one I'd written previously and so much fun. So I wanted to sort of write the second one.
So the first story, what you said, was prompted by family background.
Yes.
But Who's the Dummy Now is very much about passions and interests of yours. You are a bridge player.
Yes.
So for people who haven't yet read the book, and we encourage you to do so, the book is set on a cruise predominantly, and it is a murder mystery whodunit. You don't need to know a huge amount about bridge, you don't need to know much about bridge at all to be able to enjoy the book, but it's set on a bridge party that goes onto a cruise, and you are a bridge player. What do you like about the game?
It's just fascinating. You can never get on top of it. However hard you try, however well you think you're doing, there's always something more. There's always something more to learn, and it's challenging.
You play competitively?
Occasionally. It's quite draining to play competitively because bridge players take it very seriously. They can practically get violent. So you have to sort of back off and try and play for pleasure to sort of
right. Well, one
can
hear in the, and they call it a post-mortem, after a bridge match.
Yes.
One can hear people saying, "I could have killed you at that point."
Yes.
But that's not how the murder happens in Who's the Dummy Now?
Well, no.
It's not because of that. It's foul play, but it's not about that play.
Well, it may have something to do with it. You know, it depends on your interpretation.
And the characters in Who's the Dummy Now are based around friends, people you've seen playing bridge.
You know, when you're playing bridge, it involves so much concentration that when there are breaks, people sort of relax, they open up, they talk about their lives, and you glean a lot from the people that you are playing bridge with. You become very close. It's quite a close-knit community, bridge players, and you see them every week and you get to know them, and they're so different. So many different people play bridge for different reasons. Some people play because they like to, it gives them a reason to go out. They meet their friends. Others play because it's a competitive game. They're not there to meet people or make friends. They just want, you know, it's the challenge of the game. And it's interesting to meet all these different people. And gradually it took form, it took shape. The story took shape.
So you brought those different impetuses for bridge into the character development that you've got there.
Yes.
So you just like got a book, you've got a plot. When you started writing, did you know where it was going?
No, not really. My son Ed gets very cross with me. He says you should do a book plan. It should be all worked out before you sit down at the laptop. It should all be worked out, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And he's probably right, but I didn't do that.
So it evolves.
It evolves as you're going along. The characters start to take shape. They speak. They take form. They do in your head. They take form, and you.
Is Anthony your bridge partner?
No.
No. Does your bridge partner complain that you're supposed to count the cards and work out where you're going in a match and not let the hands take form?
Well, I do get into trouble for making various mistakes. I have got better.
You got it.
I have got better.
Right. So it's an evolving thing. You write the book as you're going on a laptop.
Yes. Yes.
And you sit down every day?
Well, in the middle, sit down every day. In the middle of the night, you get up because the character says something to you. You're watching television and you're not thinking about the book, and then the character speaks to you, or the plot, it becomes real. So you jump out of bed 3 o'clock in the morning, turn the light on, annoy Anthony, and write down the scene, bullet points of how you want it to. It's all-consuming.
Right. So you write bullet points and then flesh it out with the dialogue.
Yes. Sort of weave a story around it.
And some days you write, some days you don't, or you say, you know, I'm setting myself the month or the year to write the book.
I'm usually quite disciplined, but if somebody says, come out for lunch, we've got somewhere lovely to take you, I can't resist. And then you get back and you think, well, it's 4 o'clock. It seems to change. So,
lunch
well, you know, in the afternoon. So I do try and do a little bit every day and keep it going. You do get writer's block where there are weeks where you can't think what to do, what to write, or how to. This is quite difficult to write 80, 100,000 words. It's not an academic paper. It's all in here. So the whole story is in your head, and you have to sort of think, where do I want this story to go? How do I want it to end? And with a thriller, you have to tie up all the loose ends. There has to be red herrings, and it has to be a gentle romp, I would say, through the story. It's not a dark story like Rebus, where the detective or the policeman has psychological problems or personal problems. It's just a gentle story of all the different characters and why each one has a motive to kill the victim.
So, who are the authors that you enjoy reading?
Well, the problem with reading and writing is that the writing of the book spoils the reading. Because every time you pick up a book, you're proofreading it. And you're not really reading it for enjoyment, as I used to. So it took a long time for me to pick up a book and just read it, not worry about sentences, punctuation, how he's the formatting, just to read it for pleasure, which I used to do.
Mm-hmm. So who do you used to enjoy reading?
I like, recently I read John Grisham, The Guardian, about a lawyer turned priest who tried to get off a chap on death row for murder. And that was it's called The Guardian, and it's an excellent book. I like spy and espionage, that's
That's the genre.
My genre, really. Frederick Forsyth. He wrote a marvellous book about an autistic child who inadvertently hacked into the Pentagon. So the CIA recruited him and worked with him in his bedroom upstairs in the loft. And he was in danger because he managed to hack into Russia and all the different, and it was fascinating. So that's.
And when you're reading other people's writing, do you think this is a style I like, or this is a concept, a plot direction I like, or?
Well, this was why I wasn't really enjoying reading, so I've stopped that. But mainly when you start writing, you pick up a book and think, I can do better than that. That's not very entertaining. A lot of books, are published, and you wonder why or how. So
they say that everybody's got a book in them, but some people should just leave it in them.
Exactly.
You put it out there.
Exactly.
You put it out, and you've done too. So how easy is it to become a published author?
Very difficult. I think you just have to. A lot of it is luck. You have to hit on what the publisher is looking for, and mainly the publisher is looking for a series. That's why Agatha Christie was popular. She had Poirot, and Poirot was able to turn up in 17 different books. Miss Marple and P.D. James writes, so that's the sort of thing they're looking for.
So is Miranda Soames going to reappear over the next 8 or 10 books?
Well, I'll never say never. Never say never. I mean, I think she's an interesting character. She's representative of lots of young professional women in society today, and she gets around, and she She went on a cruise because she wanted to think about a future with her boyfriend and decide whether she wanted to have a life with him. So she thought she'd go on this bridge cruise and have time to think about it. And,
Have you been on a bridge cruise?
it's not a bridge cruise per se, but I played bridge on a cruise.
You played bridge on a cruise. Where did you cruise?
The Mediterranean. We've done 13 cruises, and that's why it was so much fun murdering somebody on board ship.
Right, so I'm going to ask you've clearly done your research on bridge, you've done your research on cruising. What was your research on murder?
A friend of mine is a detective, and she had worked on a case on the Queen Mary. One steward had murdered another steward on board ship. And she took me through, obviously she was explaining how she had investigated the crime, all the ins and outs of how people had to come on board. And I've sort of weaved it into my own story.
Right, so without divulging what happens with your murder on the cruise, there is an investigation that happens during the cruise. And the detective has to ask questions. You've got a nice bit of dialogue around that. So that was based on the experiences that you were.
It's very difficult because on board ship, when you're in the middle of the sea, you're in no man's land. So you're not. It's a bit lawless. So you're tied to the country where the ship is registered. That is
Panama or Liberia.
Yes. So that's the law of the ship when you're out at sea. Wherever the ship is registered is the law of the land. And I don't think ships use it that much today because it's not really that convenient. But in this particular case, the ship was registered in the Bahamas. So the superintendent had to be flown from the Bahamas onto the ship.
So let's take the opportunity to hear the story in your own words. And I've got an extract here, which is where the murder has happened. The detective has come on board the ship and he is meeting Miranda Soames, who is one of the primary characters and a good friend of the victim.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Samuel James. I am the assistant superintendent heading this investigation. Please sit down. Can we offer you a tea or coffee? Samuel stood up and shook Miranda's hand, wearing a friendly smile. He felt less tense about this interview due to the comment written in the margin next to her name on the list that Nick Lombardo had handed to him. He looked down and reread his notes. She has been an unofficial peacekeeper during this bridge cruise with a good understanding of the many and complex personalities in the group. It was like a very good school board. He looked up and smiled. I hope you don't mind if I ask you a few questions about Mrs. Manning. Please do, Miranda felt surprisingly relaxed. Now, I believe you were quite close to Mrs. Manning, not just on this cruise, but during the period of time you've been playing bridge. She was your bridge partner, is that right? Samuel looked at his notes. Yes, we usually play together, but Cynthia played a lot of bridge and had other partners. I only play once a week. Yes, it's difficult to phrase this, but has Mrs. Manning's murder come as a complete surprise to you? Samuel looked nervously at Miranda. Absolutely. I actually feel traumatized by it. What exactly do you mean by surprise? As a close friend, you will be in a position to know whether Mrs. Manning was frightened about anything, scared of anyone, threatened by someone. Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, to take it to the someone is
Right. Is there anyone you know in particular whose toes she was treading on or who she was betraying and would likely fight back? Everyone in this group is very outspoken. If Cynthia was getting on anyone's nerves, which she did regularly, they would tell her in no uncertain terms. She took it all in good faith. She didn't hold a grudge. Nobody fell out over it. Miranda was confident about what she was saying. Someone wanted to fall out over it. Miss Soames, evidently. Evidently, Miranda repeated. It's quite horrible, really. I mean, there isn't one person in this group that I could accuse of doing this, that I would suspect of being capable of murder. Is it possible that she was murdered by someone else on the ship that she came into contact with? It could be anybody. It is possible, but due to the nature of the crime, unlikely. I would say that Mrs. Manning knew her murderer. Samuel hoped Miranda wouldn't ask for any further details. May I ask how she was murdered? She was bludgeoned to death and strangled, and that leads me to believe it was very personal. Samuel watched her reaction. We will be looking at some CCTV footage, and I may need to call for you again. Absolutely, whatever I could do to help. Miranda's face had turned pale. She thought she was going to be violently sick and hoped she would get back to her cabin in time.
So thank you for that. What makes a good whodunit?
Well, I'm not really, as this is my first, I wouldn't presume to know, but I think that it's keeping it simple, not to have too much going on, to just, we all have felt, should I say, well, some more than others possibly, Rabbi, like murdering people or disliking people, So it's quite easy to create this feeling of sort of anger.
How often do you feel like murdering someone?
Not so much now. I think age has mellowed me.
Right. You ever sort of drawn up a plan?
No, but then I don't do I. It's not my thing, drawing up a plan.
No, it'll be quite organic. Right. Absolutely perfect answer, and probably on the strength of that, I would advise you, emulate your murder if you need to, rather than otherwise you're just going to make too many pitfalls. How did you structure? There are many motives clearly in a whodunit. How did you structure and plan the thread that takes you through to the real murderer and the sting at the end? How do you do that?
I think you have to ask some key questions. What did she do to piss everybody off? So right. That's the first thing. Who would dislike whatever it was she did most, and why? And then, of course, there has to be a twist, because you don't want it to be a predictable thing. I mean, what would be predictable was chucking her overboard. And there are murders on cruise ships, they do exist, and most of them are chucked overboard. And some people get away with that. But I can't understand how you could chuck somebody overboard with all the cameras, because there are quite a lot of cameras. And so if you were to lift somebody up and throw them overboard, it's likely that you would be discovered. So you have to think, how would I murder that person and not be discovered? And it's today with the security the way it is, it's not easy. So you have to think about how the murderer was going to get away with it. And that was the hardest thing, I think.
And where are you naturally going on your next cruise?
You've got one to choose. If he doesn't come back, it's got nothing to do with me.
All right. Just know where the cameras are. And stay close to them. So who are you writing for?
It's very satisfying to get to the last full stop, for all the sort of, to tie it all together and for the story to actually flow. The problem is the proofreading, because you can't proofread your own work. So it had 4 or 5 rewrites, and I think most authors have this problem. You're writing this story and you're getting excited and you're getting carried away. You have to make sure you haven't repeated characters don't keep coming and saying the same things. It's very difficult because, if I was telling you this story on the telephone about the victim, how she was murdered and what had happened on the cruise ship, it's one thing. But when you write a book, you have to create the atmosphere, the reader has to live it, he has to sense it.
So you visualize your audience?
Yes.
You're not just writing your stream of consciousness, you're telling the story to someone and you're picturing them or a group of people.
And you have to tell the story to someone that doesn't know anything, doesn't know about cruises, doesn't know about anything. So you have to explain. You have to set the scene.
So who are you trying to interest in buying Who's the Dummy Now?
Anybody who's interested in a sort of character analysis, because they will relate to most of the characters in the book. They're not people that you've never met or you can't relate to. They're people that you would meet every day. Ordinary folk who I think,
What did you edit out of the book?
Not a great deal, really. I don't know. I liked it almost immediately. I love the story. I like the premise of it. I did straight away. It wasn't a struggle. Sometimes you struggle on to write the story, and there's a lot of, I don't know if you read books, but there's a lot of waffle to build the book up to make it into a story. So I've tried not to do that.
So it's quite tight, apart from the fact that you've
tight.
clearly got red herrings in there. And
Yes.
everything is part of the
So
story.
it goes at a fair pace rather than sort of round the block.
And did you hide any in-jokes for people in the story that
Yes.
the readers would, that friends or family would identify and say, she's written this just for me?
No.
No.
No, but I mean, you can see that some of the characters have no idea that they're suspicious. They are suspicious, but they can't understand why other people would view them as suspicious. So that was the fun thing, writing about the person, and yet they are suspicious. A reader would view them as suspicious.
And how's sales going?
Not
People
too
buying
bad. Yes, they
Yeah.
are. They are buying it. There's a lot of sales on the what did you call it? The
Amazon,
the
Kindle
Kindle
version, yeah.
free. They download pages of it.
Right, so the reviews, the top three on there are kept me guessing till the very end, a grand slam, and a page turner. So those were quite
And it
positive.
fills me with joy that
It
they
fills-
feel that way. That was the whole point of doing it. So really, if that's how they feel about the book, which is what I wanted them to feel, then I'm happy.
You're working on the next one?
I had a few ideas. I have a few ideas, but we'll have to see.
How did the family relate to you doing this?
They haven't really taken me as seriously as I would like. I have to say.
Meaning?
Well, we need you to do something. Come on, we need you to take us somewhere or whatever. They can't. You can see how Roald Dahl had a little shed at the bottom of the garden, and he was never disturbed. You can see how somebody would do that.
He was a very dark person. Eh?
But he needed some peace and quiet to write his book, and you can
You
understand.
don't get peace and quiet.
They get peace
You
and
don't get
quiet.
peace and quiet. Yeah. And that's why you occasionally feel like murdering people.
Something like that.
All right. Okay, so let me take the opportunity. We've got people in the audience here who can ask some questions, but also if people online want to ask Melanie some questions, please use the raise your hand icon to raise your hand, and I'll pick you out of the participants. You can feel free also just to put questions into the chat, and I'll read them out to Melanie, and she will answer the questions. Just a reminder, we're talking to Melanie Harris, author of Who's the Dummy Now? A murder mystery set on a bridge group going on a cruise. Anybody here got any questions? Yeah, go on.
Who's your favorite character to write?
Well, I quite liked.
Who's your favourite character to write in the book? So just amplifying it for the
I like writing about Cynthia because she was a colourful, racy character.
This is the victim.
This is the victim. Everybody likes somebody like that because she's out there and she's quite mouthy. So she's an interesting person to write about. But also I like to write about all the different characters who had a motive to murder her as well.
Somebody isn't muted. Right. Okay. So the victim was a favourite character.
Yes, I could see her. I could see her so clearly in her cabin, you know, getting herself ready to go to bed, you know, before she was murdered. And it was
Right. How do you decide when to end? You're writing a book. You've resolved the murder. And how do you decide when to end a book?
It sort of seemed to me here that it was the right place to finish, because I thought to myself, well, if I wanted to carry on and build another story, a sequel, I can. So I didn't want to sort of draw a complete line under it. And as I was explaining how the murderer was uncovered, I've got to be so careful. I don't want not to give the game away. It just seemed a natural ending to the story for me.
Why did you choose to align bridge and murder, or at least put them, as I've got here, in the same boat?
It just worked. At first, I was just going to write a thriller about bridge, but then I thought, no, let's take them on a cruise, because it makes a much nicer, more interesting story. It's more varied. It's more. It just works better. I just thought it worked better to take them on a cruise. It's easier to murder somebody on a ship.
I'll bear that in mind. And what are your hobbies otherwise?
I like ballroom dancing. I was quite good at it. I stopped. I haven't done it for a while since lockdown, but I did get a bronze for my cha-cha. I just wanted you to know that. And I'm very proud.
When did you get a bronze for your cha-cha?
A year or two ago.
Wow, so very recently.
Very recently, I did my exam.
Are we going to see you on Strictly?
Well, that might be my next project. I'm thinking very hard
What,
about
murder
it.
at Strictly? Or
Sort of dance my way into the history books.
is it something you watch?
It's occasionally, yes. Yes, I do. But it was wonderful. I had a very nice teacher. She was a Chinese lady, very strong, was able to whirl me around. It all started when I was on a cruise ship, actually, when I had Vladimir. I asked Vladimir if he would give me a ballroom dancing lesson. And I was hooked. So when I came back off the cruise, I booked myself some ballroom dancing lessons.
And Vladimir does appear in the book.
Vladimir does appear, yes.
All right, okay. Does he get royalties?
I was thinking of saying that, but I thought better not. Don't tell him. That he features in the book.
In the event that I'm on that cruise and Vladimir is teaching the cha-cha, I shall ask him to read the book. How do you know about publishing a book? So, you know, people have got ideas, people want to write something, people want to get it out there, but you come to the end of your 80,000 words, whatever you said it was, it's a huge amount of words. You come to the end of that, what do you do with it?
You have to look up publishers. Actually, you have to look up literary agents. You cannot submit your work directly to a publisher. They will only look at submissions from agents, unfortunately. So you find an literary agent, there's lists of them that you can get anywhere, who specialize in your genre, because some literary agents only do children's stories, some do poetry, some only do non-fiction. So you have to find something that's prepared to do thriller, sort of women's popular fiction. And they have a submission rule. They have some rules of submission for you. So they have a list of things they want. Some of them will only take 3 chapters and a synopsis of the story. The problem with submitting your book is that writing a synopsis of your story is harder than writing the whole book, because you have to tell the story right the way through, including the end, in 1,000 words. And it has to be enough for them to think, yes, I like that. We're going to represent this author.
And how do you trust someone when you do that, not to have given the story away? Don't you feel you're sort of handing over your baby?
Yes, you do. You do. It's a leap of faith. Unfortunately, it's a leap of faith because you can't protect it. You know, it may very well, in 2 or 3 years' time, that might be a feature film. Somebody might have stolen my idea. Fortunately, I'm married to a lawyer and I have a son that's a lawyer, and I'm hoping that it'll be useful.
Criminal defense or and
Intellectual property.
intellectual property, right? So you write you write a book and you publish it. How do you go about selling it?
What if it's published or if I publish it?
How do you sell it? Either which way. I mean, the publisher helps if you've got a publisher.
Yes, they have a longer reach.
You're in bookshops.
I'm in bookshops. You just have to go out there. You have to promote it. There are different sites, author and writers sites, and lots of people have written books, and they're all out there promoting it. So you've got to sort of hope that what you're writing it has a slight edge to everybody else. You know, there's some fantastic self-published work, fantastic stuff out there. So you're really, the competition is scary.
You mentioned before when we were talking about finding a literary agent and the genre, you said it, as a woman writer. Do you actually think of yourself as a, you think of yourself as a woman, do you think of yourself as a woman writer? Is that a particular?
Well, you have to tell them how to market it. They want you to tell them where it should be marketed within the realms of their publishing. So they have different sections: women's fiction, popular women's fiction. I would say that the protagonist is a woman, the victim is a woman, so it might appeal more to women, the book, than to men, I think, unfortunately.
And your previous book, One Child's Too Many, also for women or more general?
No, I think that's more general. I didn't suggest it goes under women's fiction, popular women's fiction. I just put it under family saga, really, and hoped for the best. I don't know, it's, you know, I write from the heart, Rabbi, and if it doesn't appeal to a publisher or it isn't commercial, well, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. If you write your book and you write from the heart, these are not stories I can churn out. It's not like a Barbara Cartland romance where every week she could churn it out. These are just stories that I've thought about that might be interesting.
Did you tell your kids stories?
I did. They weren't very good. They were. I don't think the children thought they were very good, but it's quite hard to sort of tell a child's story to try and keep their interest. I think.
Did your parents tell you stories?
My grandfather told me stories. He was very good at telling stories. The Bubitschkala and the Bobitschkala, because he was, and these two were secret agents. So it was quite a nice story. Yes, because his language was Yiddish, so he would make this into an interesting story.
The question you probably get asked every time somebody's interviewing you, discussing your work, what advice would you give to somebody who's an aspirant writer?
Get it on paper, write it down, get it down, and worry about everything else afterwards. You have to get it down. Everything that you want to say, how you want to say it. Don't worry about how it comes across. You can sort of sort it all out. it's got to get it all down on paper. That's the advice I was given when I started writing. Don't be frightened to get it down, and also don't be frightened to, if it's fiction. The trouble with writing is you try and stick to the facts. If you're writing about a family saga, for example, you try to stick to the facts. And an editor said to me, "This is fiction. Enjoy yourself. Make it into a story. It doesn't have to be true. It just needs to be a lovely story that somebody wants to read." So that sort of freed you up into writing whatever you wanted.
So every now and then you hear about great authors whose lost manuscripts have been discovered and things that they've written 50 years ago. After To Kill a Mockingbird, nothing was heard, and then suddenly the story comes out.
Yes. And if you read it, it comes across a load of rubbish. If you looked at that manuscript, the early writing of the author, you think, that wasn't Harper Lee. God, that's a load of rubbish.
So put it down, but you might need to go back and look over
Every time you look at it, every time you write you write 2 chapters, the next day you go back to it and think, you fiddle with it and tighten it up, then you leave it for a few days, go back to it, you change it all the time until eventually you look at it and think, I'm happy with that.
So how do you pick your proofreaders and your sort of pre-publication critics?
Well, if you're published, then that comes out of the royalties. And it's very expensive because they're very good. If, like myself, you're self-published, you have to hope for the best. And I've been very lucky. I've had so many proofreaders. I've given it to lots of my friends. They've come back with they've spotted lots of things that could need changing in the book. It's been invaluable, the proofreaders that I've given the book to, things I didn't see. Because you're writing, as I said, you're writing and it's getting exciting and you repeat yourself. So they've seen it in the cold light of day. It's fantastic.
And are you good at accepting criticism?
I think so.
People criticise the storyline as well as sort of grammar and punctuation?
Yes. And I've changed it and I'm happy with it. If they had suggested something I wasn't happy with or didn't, and I'm quite good like that. If they've said something constructive and I agree with them, for example, the way the book, the murder is in the opening chapter of the book, that wasn't the case at the beginning.
Right.
So when it was suggested that I did that.
So they say that in American detective fiction, unless there's a dead body on the slab in the first couple of pages, you've lost your audience.
It's not a British thing to do. It doesn't seem to be a British thing to do. But more and more, it's getting more popular to do that because people's attention, it's quite hard to get people's attention straight away. And people give up because, years ago, people would read. They had patience. Today, when people read, that's no go, next one. They haven't got.
So do you imagine people are going to sit down and read the book in one go, or through the nights?
Well, I read. I like to immerse myself in the story. That's how I read. If you keep putting the book down, running away, or doing other things and coming back, I think, especially with the thriller, you lose the thread. I think so. Some people read 2 or 3 books at once. I don't know how they manage that.
Confused with the names.
Yes. Was that book or was that book? So, yes.
Right. Any other questions for anybody in the room here? Yeah, go on.
You came up with the artwork on the cover page. It's very eye-catching.
It was a collaborative effort between myself and my artistic director, Charles Harris.
Right. Can we get the right camera there? I'll work.
We wanted to do something sort of fairly minimalist and eye-catching. I think we managed it. What do you think, Rabbi? Do you think it's a nice cover?
I think it says cards and crews and dripping blood. And I actually find that it's very annoying because I put the ace, king, queen, jack, 10 the other way when I'm holding my cards, or I place them down. Yeah. I put the ace behind the king, etc. And when we play,
I think that's reason for murder.
When we play cards at home, and I am laying out cards, whether it's in bridge or if we're playing Kabuki, that is how half the family put the cards out, and I am. I'm not in favour. Yeah. Yeah, go on.
Are you thinking about your next book already, or you brave now?
I did think about my next book, and I had some very nice ideas, but I'm just wondering whether I should call it a day, really. I'm not sure. You never know. I might wake up and think, no, I'm going to do as I have suggested to Rabbi Lawrence, get it all down on paper and see where it takes me. Because it does. It has a mind of its own. After a few pages, it leads you into this. It's great. It's a great adventure writing a book, and I would suggest that anybody who feels they've got a story to tell should do it. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain.
So, a friend of my wife's, who a Rebbitzin, wrote a book about the Ladies' Guild of a fictional synagogue, and clearly brought in anecdotes and characters from experience, and thought she had done quite a good job in anonymizing the story, but found that people who were interested in her as an author, who knew her, saw themselves in the story and saw their life and saw their anecdotes, and it may have gone down very well. It may have felt sometimes it was just a little too cutting. Are you able to keep your characters and your friends both happy?
I think in this book I have done, yes. I don't think that too many of my friends will see themselves in the characters of this book. But I hope not. But we will see. We will soon see by the rest of the reviews. I'm hoping there'll be more, and you'll see who gets upset and who doesn't. So
thank you very much, Melanie Harris,
you.
author of Who's the Dummy Now? If people want to buy the book, they can do it through Amazon. And which bookshops are you in? Also, you can really go in and buy a book still.
I forgot the name of the shop. In Belsize Park. No, Daunt Books in Belsize Park and in Southend Green.
Wonderful. So many ways of acquiring it. Also a Kindle edition. Thank you very much for joining us. And in